A world-renowned scientist claimed he discovered the real Atlantis, and what he found was terrifying. Is it true, or is it another hoax? In today's video, we are going to dive deep into the shocking discovery made by this expert and what it means for our understanding of human history. You won't want to miss this. They believed that they were invincible and that no one could defeat them. And when they tried to conquer other lands, they were ultimately unsuccessful. As a result, the gods were angry with the Atlanteans and sent a great flood to wipe out their civilization. That's where things get a bit tricky. There is no hard evidence that Atlantis was ever a real place. Some researchers believe that the eruption may have inspired one part of the story, while other events inspired the rest. For example, the eruption could have been responsible for the sudden demise of the Atlanteans, while other factors, such as their location, it's entirely possible that he drew inspiration from various sources and created a composite civilization that never truly existed. In fact, this is probably the most plausible explanation for the story of Atlantis. After all, there are many similarities between the various civilizations that Plato could have drawn inspiration from, such as the Minoan civilization in Greece. We can only speculate about the origins of the myth and what inspired Plato to write it. They believe that the story of Atlantis was based on real events that occurred thousands of years ago. They point to archaeological evidence. Geological findings in ancient texts is proof that Atlantis was once a thriving civilization. We hope that you enjoyed learning about the latest discoveries and evidence that suggest that this ancient civilization may have really existed. The mystery of Atlantis continues to captivate people all over the world, and we hope that you too will continue to explore the possibilities. Until next time, happy exploring. Others, however, are not so convinced. They argue that the story of Atlantis is nothing more than a myth, a cautionary tale that has been passed down through generations. The story of Atlantis has captured the imaginations of people for centuries, and the possibility that there is more to the world than we know. Whether or not Atlantis ever existed, the story has captured our imaginations and inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. It's a tale of hubris and destruction, a reminder of the power of nature and the folly of man. But perhaps the most important lesson to take away from the story of Atlantis is to never stop searching for the truth. No matter how elusive it may seem, the pursuit of knowledge is a noble one, and the rewards are immeasurable. Who knows? You may be the one to discover the secrets of the lost city of Atlantis. It's a tale of a great civilization that was lost, destroyed by natural disaster or human error. But despite its enduring popularity, the question remains, did Atlantis ever really exist? In advanced technology, were inspired by real-world civilizations that existed during Plato's lifetime. They were known for their advanced society, their impressive architecture, and their sophisticated art. The Minoans were never said to have been destroyed by a flood, which is a key element of the Atlantis story. However, there is evidence that the Minoan civilization was devastated by volcanic eruptions. As we discussed earlier, the Santorini caldera erupted around 3600 BC, which would have had a devastating impact on the Minoan civilization. In fact, some researchers believe that the eruption was so catastrophic that it caused a massive tsunami that destroyed entire cities along the coast. If this is true, then it's possible that the eruption inspired the Atlantis myth. Perhaps Plato heard stories of the devastation that had occurred on Santorini and used it as the basis for his story. Maybe he created Atlantis as a way to memorialize those who had been lost in the disaster. Now, while the Minoans weren't known for having a navy, they did have a strong presence in the Mediterranean and may have had contact with other civilizations. Additionally, they were known for their skill in engineering and construction, built impressive palaces and temples, and developed a sophisticated irrigation system. So it's not unreasonable to suggest that the Atlanteans could have been inspired by the Minoan civilization. Most historians believe that it was a figment of Plato's imagination, a story he created to make a philosophical point, rather than a literal account of historical events. However, there are others who believe that Atlantis really did exist. They point to certain geological and archaeological findings as proof that the story of Atlantis is rooted in reality. Now, whether or not this is an accurate portrayal of what really happened is up for debate. In 1864, an Italian geologist named Giovanni Spedalieri noticed that the geological features of the islands matched Plato's description of Atlantis. He believed that the islands were the remains of a once great empire, a civilization that had been destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption. Now, this theory was widely accepted until 1900, when a German geographer named Albrecht Penck proved that the eruption had occurred around 3600 BC. This was thousands of years before Plato's time, which meant that the eruption couldn't have been the inspiration for his story. But it was clear that Plato wanted to make a point about the dangers of arrogance and the importance of humility. To begin at the beginning, let's go back to Plato's description of the city. According to Plato, Atlantis existed around 9,000 years before his time, which would place its founding around 7000 BC. But recent discoveries have pushed that date back even further. Researchers now believe that the earliest settlements in the area date back to around 11,000 BC, which means that Atlantis could have been founded around that time as well. Of course, this is still thousands of years before Plato's time, which makes it even more unlikely that he was directly inspired by the civilization. According to Plato, they had access to incredible inventions that were far ahead of their time. They had chariots that were powered by fire, weapons that could shoot from far away, and buildings that were made of precious metals like gold and silver. Now again, we don't know how accurate these descriptions are, but it's clear that Plato was trying to show that the Atlanteans were a highly advanced civilization. He was also trying to contrast their advanced technology with their eventual downfall, showing that even the most advanced civilizations can be destroyed if they become too arrogant. According to Plato, Atlantis was a place of wisdom and enlightenment where a utopian society thrived. But then suddenly, without warning, it was swallowed up by the sea. Now obviously there are many versions of this story, but they all share some common themes. For example, the Atlanteans were known for their advanced technology, their wisdom, and their progressive ideas. They had a strong military and were feared by their enemies. But despite their power, they were ultimately brought down by their own hubris and were punished by the gods. In Plato's account, he describes the Atlanteans as being extremely arrogant and boastful. Another interesting aspect of the story is the Atlanteans' advanced technology. So now we come to the question on everyone's minds. Did Atlantis really exist? One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from the Santorini caldera. However, that doesn't mean that the Santorini caldera has nothing to do with Atlantis. Now, if you're still confused about the timeline, don't worry, because it gets even more complicated. But here's the thing. Just because Plato wasn't directly inspired by Atlantis doesn't mean that it wasn't real. The Minoan civilization was a Bronze Age culture that flourished on the island of Crete from around 2700 BC to 1450 BC, of course. There is one major difference between the two cultures, but ultimately, there is no way to know for sure. Well, according to some experts, the answer is yes. Despite the uncertainty, the search for Atlantis continues. People are still fascinated by the idea of a lost civilization. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the secrets of the lost city of Atlantis.